The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon Season 1 has come and gone, and oh boy, do I have some thoughts on this series. Spoilers are ahead, you have been warned. So The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon picks up after the events of the original series finale, and Daryl Dixon mysteriously ends up in France somehow. The show opens up with him shipwrecked on a lifeboat, floating around, washes up on a beach in France, and boom, there goes the story. The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon is a bit of a mixed bag for me. I ultimately say I enjoyed it for the most part. It is definitely way better than Dead City. I already did a whole review about that show, just not my favorite at all. But here, I would say it is good Walking Dead content. The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon is no better or worse than what we got, say, the last 2 seasons of The Walking Dead. You know, you can say it's good or bad. I don't know. At least it's decent enough. Definitely better than Dead City, where I feel like Dead City was like on par with like Fear the Walking Dead, which Fear the Walking Dead is awful. So I'm at least happy to say that Daryl Dixon is at least on par with the ending of the original show. Now, for the story itself, it does feel very Last of Us. I know a lot of people have already talked about that, and I get it. At least it feels a little bit different, I would say, because of the context surrounding the adventure of Daryl. And most of the time, Daryl isn't just with the kid. He usually has someone else with him, so it's not just like, hey, it's Ellie and Joel, and that's pretty much it. But you can tell that The Last of Us heavily influenced the series. And before I start diving deeper, I gotta say, you can tell Norman Reedus just enjoys playing Daryl Dixon, and it still looks like he's having a blast. So that in of itself is just fun to watch. So as long as he wants to be Daryl, I'll keep watching, to be completely honest. So of course, when Daryl washes up in France, he meets some new friends along the way, and the 2 main characters in the show other than Daryl are Isabel and Laurent. Isabel is Laurent's aunt, and Laurent is the supposed messiah of the apocalypse, the universe. Who really knows what they're kind of going for there? It was talked about a lot in the beginning of the series, and then it kind of petered out by the end. Now, both Isabel and Laurent are kind of a mixed bag for me too. Isabel is just kind of there. She never has any moments that I'm like, wow, she's a cool character. And wow, she's beyond the default lady character that you see in a lot of shows. She just kind of exists and helps Daryl along the way here and there. The coolest thing about her is that she's from Harry Potter. She plays Fleur, however you say it. I'm obviously not French, so I can't say it right, but the actress was in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Now, Laurent, if you watched my Walking Dead videos before, you know how I feel about The Walking Dead just needlessly adding more and more kids to the zombie apocalypse in the Walking Dead universe. We need to stop, okay? We just need to stop. Every show in the Walking Dead universe does not need a kid. It really doesn't. The kids add nothing to any of these stories. They really don't. The only child that should exist in the Walking Dead universe, realistically speaking, is Carl Grimes. That's pretty much it. Everyone else is ancillary and doesn't really matter. And the same can be said for this Laurent kid. He's pretty annoying most of the time, and he doesn't really add anything to the show. Yeah, Daryl kind of cares about him, I guess, but to the extent of, okay, does he care about this kid more than, say, Judith or RJ or any of the other kids he's had to take care of over the last few seasons of the regular show? You just didn't need to go this route. If you just threw Daryl in France and it was just him scavenging, being by himself, honestly, probably would have been a better show. We don't need more characters that you aren't going to give interesting stories to. And that's always the case when they introduce kids in these shows. They're not interesting, they're usually not that great at actors, and ultimately bring nothing to the story. But I know they're using him as a plot device to keep Daryl in France for at least another season, and I get it. It's all part of, the drama storytelling. Conflict is king, but it's just frustrating. They could have done something great. Again, I don't mind this show. I did enjoy it for the most part, but it just could have been just that next echelon of being just awesome, right? It could have just been that much cooler if Daryl wasn't worrying about babysitting another kid and having to pair up with the woman that he kind of cares for, I guess now, but not really. She's just kind of there. I know she kind of helps him out early on, but then she just becomes a thing Daryl has to do, has to save her, has to help the kid, has to help her old boyfriend. Like, it just goes on and on and on, right? The whole apocalypse now, I would say, in the Walking Dead universe feels very contrived. I guess that's a good word to say. It doesn't feel as apocalyptic as it used to. Again, like Dead City, I don't like what they did with like towns and having electricity and all that stuff before they went to Manhattan. Just felt so out of place. Now, France, I at least could suspend my disbelief a little bit more there because I don't know what France looked like, say 10 years ago in the apocalypse, where in the States, we have a very good idea what it looks like. So maybe the French didn't devolve as far as the United States did. So they have a little bit more of a societal structure. Okay, I could buy that. So that doesn't bother me as much within the context of the Daryl Dixon show. But still though, it's just odd to see. I know we've seen communities like the Commonwealth and Alexandria and the list goes on, but it's still weird seeing almost normal society within the context of The Walking Dead. It somehow just doesn't feel right. But within the context of the Daryl Dixon show, I could take it or leave it. I definitely disliked it more in Dead City. I thought the villains of Daryl Dixon were pretty weak ultimately. They didn't really add all that much. Yeah, there was some conflict and that was pretty much it. There was no real stakes. I never once feared that Daryl was gonna die. The guy with the face tattoo, that was a pretty cheap villain arc. Didn't really care. I know he technically, I guess, saved Daryl, Laurent, and Isabel at the end, even though he didn't have to show up there in the first place. So, meh on that front. And then Quinn, which is Isabel's old boyfriend, pops up randomly, 12 years later. And all of a sudden, he's Laurent's dad. And he's kind of a in-between gray area guy. But he brought nothing to the show, in my opinion. He was just there, and he has all this power amongst the underground apocalyptic French people, but we never get explained why he has that power. He just does. He's just the guy that can get things. Okay, maybe in normal society that's interesting to know and do, but in the apocalypse, like, there's just a finite number of things. So even if he's like, yeah, I got a guy that can get a barrel of wine, well, eventually no one's making wine anymore, or food, or goods, or anything like that. So I just don't get how, he's the guy to know to get things. We don't really get explained to how he has all that power. Maybe I missed it. Who's to say? That part really was just kind of a flop in my opinion. And I'll admit, I'm really surprised that they ended up killing Quinn at the end of season 1. I really am. I'm glad they did. At least it added some umph to the end of the season. There were some stakes at least, so I do appreciate that. And within the Daryl Dixon show, we have the triumphant return of variant walkers. Now again, if you've watched my content before, you know that I do not like variant walkers at all, but hey, if you're gonna do them, do them. And at least in the Daryl Dixon show, they did them. They're a part of the world. They're in almost every episode, at least half the episodes, somewhere in there. And they're very much a thing. So I'll give them props. At least they actually exist within this show, unlike Dead City. And in saying that, the variant walkers did make for some pretty good scenes, especially the Walker Pit scene at the end of the season, which felt just like the Walker Pit scene in season 3 of The Walking Dead with Daryl and Merle. But I digress. That was a pretty cool moment. Daryl killing the variant walker and then him getting chained to Quinn and them killing variant walkers together. That was pretty cool. I will give them that. That's probably one of the coolest moments of the season. Also, Daryl got burnt by one of the variant walkers. He got grabbed on his arm. That was interesting to see. And we also see one that was like super quick and fast on the boat when Daryl got kidnapped. That's pretty much it, I think, on the variant walker front. We also learned a little bit more about Daryl's family. We learned that his grandpa died in France during World War II. And Daryl, of course, conveniently finds his grandpa's tombstone, which, I mean, the odds of that. But hey, I can overlook that. It was a nice scene. And we learned that his name is Will Dixon, which is a fun little nod to the Survival Instinct game that came out in 2013. I also did a whole review on that game where we actually learned Daryl's dad's name is Will Dixon. So obviously in retrospect, that means Daryl's dad is actually a junior, Will Dixon Jr., and Daryl's grandpa is of course Will Dixon Sr. Not that many people care, but that is a nice little nerdy deep cut right there for you. Ultimately, I thought the series again was solid enough. It's on par with the end of the last couple of seasons of the mainline series of The Walking Dead. I thought the scenery and cinematography was really good in this series. Definitely felt like a breath of fresh air. You could tell that they were actually in France, on location, in cool, new, unique places. That part of it was very, very cool to see and added to the overall experience quite well. And I can't sign off before bringing up that Carol is going to be in season 2 of The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon, The Book of Carol. My goodness, is that a mouthful. So we get a little post-credit scene where Carol is looking for Daryl. And of course, it's a little ham-handed, but we get it, and Carol's going to be out looking for Daryl in season 2, which to me, they could have done this a little bit better, where Carol and Daryl were together, they shipwrecked, and then they've both been looking for each other, and we may have not even seen Carol in all of season 1, and she shows up in season 2. That would have been a way to give Melissa McBride her time off, and then have that story tie into season 2. But whatever, it is what it is. We're getting Carol in season 2. It'll be real interesting to see how she ends up in France. Who knows how that's going to happen. So regardless of how all that works out, I'm excited to see Carol and Daryl back together again, fighting walkers, saving the day. So with that said, let me know your thoughts on The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon. I'm sure I missed a few things, so if I forgot some just outstanding things, let me know down in the comment section below, and also give me your thoughts on the series as a whole. And while you're down there, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, that'd be greatly appreciated. Until next time, guys, everyone have a great day. Thanks for watching.